Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. Today, we're going to be doing a Twin Peaks character draft. We just finally got through, I've watched the entire series sometime, I think, 2023.
Yeah, I just finished it for the first time. We just finished The Return.
Yeah, we watched all of seasons 1 and 2, Fire Walk with Me, the movie, and then season 3, quote unquote, but it's Twin Peaks The Return, the Showtime show. So we're going to be doing a 10 character draft of our favorite characters from any part of the series.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth, and we'll each get 5 characters. And yeah, I'm excited. There's a ton of characters. I had like a good 10 to 15 that I could do. I'm pretty sure I know who you're going to pick first, so I think we're just going to let you go first because
it's pretty obvious.
It's kind of like, yeah, there's a clear 1-1.
Also, I want to add, this will be spoiler free. We will not spoil.
Yeah, we won't be getting, we were thinking of a way to honor David Lynch, and we kind of had your deep dive last year where you went through all his movies, and the world of Twin Peaks is vast, and the plot points are confusing and long, and so instead of doing a beat-by-beat episode recap or like a season recap, we decided let's just talk about the characters themselves because it's easier to freely discuss them without giving away spoilers, but also it's easier to understand who a character is than what's happening to them most of the time.
100%. And arguably, I would say the reason I like Twin Peaks so much is not because of plot point A, B, C, and the explanation of what is even happening in the show. It's just sort of a show you can vibe out to, and like the characters are really what drive the whole show anyway. It's funny that we started watching the Twin Peaks show together probably last October, I think. I had kind of finished watching the series early last year, and then we had started to watch the whole show together because we were taking a trip to Seattle and we were going to go to the Double R Diner and kind of see all of Snoqualmie and kind of see some of the locations and stuff together again. But then, you know, David Lynch obviously passed away earlier in January. And so it was kind of, it felt like a very nice way to like send him off was to finish up The Return. And so, yeah, this is sort of our tribute episode, as it were. Okay.
So who's your first pick? Because I'm pretty sure...
Yeah, it's really obvious who my first pick would be for my favorite character. It's Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, and Dale Cooper's kind of like the main character for the most part.
Arguably the most iconic detective in all of television history. The most chaotically positive force for good that I've ever seen in a fictional character. I would say Twin Peaks is not my favorite TV show of all time, but I've mentioned this before. Dale Cooper is my favorite fictional character of all time. Like, I think that he's just a very sweet person, a very kind person. At a lot of points in the show, maybe not during season 1, but there's a lot of very like dark and horrifying elements to Twin Peaks that make it somewhat nauseating. But I feel like Dale Cooper is just sort of this happy force for good that just kind of holds your hand and walks you through this terrible world. And all he does is just survive off of coffee and cherry pie.
Yeah, he's like the human form of coffee almost.
Yes.
As a person.
And, you know, I would say if we're including any doppelganger, pseudo Dale Cooper characters that are present in The Return, I would include Dougie Jones as part of this number 1. Dougie Jones is like probably my favorite thing about The Return, just because he's
Mr. Jackpots.
Mr. Jackpots, and he's also the physical embodiment of that one line that Kevin says from The Office, why say more word when less word do trick? Because he just says like one word liners all the time. Because he like barely speaks English. So, yeah, honestly, I just really like Dale Cooper. I think his fits are iconic. His quotes are iconic. I just think he's wonderful.
Yeah, it's hard to top that and try to match that. I don't really have a clear top choice after that or a second choice, but I'm going to pick Leland Palmer.
I'm so glad you
as
picked
my first
Leland.
choice. The dad.
Laura Palmer's dad.
Played by Ray Wise. He's so funny. It's a funny performance. He's unhinged. There's moments where he's just like a normal dad type character, and then there's other moments where he's obviously just insane. And as you watch the show, you'll see him kind of twist and turn as things happen. But it might be one of my, if not the best acting performance of everybody. The way he's more prevalent in the movie.
In Fire
In
Walk
the
with
first
Me.
2 seasons, he's not really in the Return so much, but
He has one scene in The Return.
yeah. So I think if you don't consider Dale Cooper, who has already been taken, he's kind of Leland Palmer's kind of like the next character that kind of embodies the show, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of moments that stand out to me, specifically with Leland. There's the part where he's walking in on Ben Horn and Jerry, and I forget what song it is he's singing. Something about Little Does and Ivy or something.
Yeah.
And he's just like singing that song like manically. There's that.
He'll just manically sing or dance or smile.
Because he's just lost his daughter and he's just like losing his mind. The part where he jumps on her coffin as it's being lowered into the ground and then it just goes up and down and up and down. Yeah. Because they can't get it to lower. That part is so hilarious. Yeah, I think those are probably the two stand out. And then the fact that he comes back, I think it's season 2 where he just inexplicably comes back with white hair. Nobody explains anything. Mm-hmm. He just comes back with a completely different hair color. Like, I love that. So chaotic, but so crazy. Yeah, he does a really good job. Okay, my second character that I would draft, so this is our number 3. This is no surprise for me. I feel like this is a really obvious choice. It's Gordon Cole, played by David Lynch in the show. And again, he's virtually not in a lot of the first or second season. Like, he has sort of like a recurring character role. He's a bit in Fire Walk with Me, and then he's a huge piece of The Return. I just love the fact that he is nearly deaf and has this like tuned up earpiece. Yeah, he has this like super highly tuned up earpiece and he's just constantly yelling at everyone and he's constantly mishearing everything everyone says. And like there's a scene where he goes into another room with Dale Cooper and he's like, Dale, I gotta talk to you about something. And they go in the other room to like try to have privacy, but because he's still yelling, everyone on the other side of the door can hear what he's saying. Mm-hmm. And then I also like the part where he meets up with Dale Cooper and like, I think it's one of the first times in the whole series that he sees him. And he's like, today you remind me of a Mexican chihuahua. Yeah. Like, I just love, he's like really, really unhinged, but
yeah, because of the way he talks, it makes it more funny to whatever he says.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he just injected himself into his own show that he's directing, writing, producing.
And he's like the FBI director.
Yeah, he's like, I just want to be in this show, and I just want to be around pretty girls. And the part where Shelley is like talking to him at the diner, and she's like,
massive quantities of pie.
She says, do you want a slice of pie? And he's like, massive quantity, sweetheart. My socks are on fire. Like, I just love, he's just so wonderful. He's very similar in like temperament to Dale Cooper. I mean, they're cut from the same cloth. Arguably, Dale Cooper is just a manifestation of David Lynch as a person, and so is Gordon Cole. So, yeah, I just love both of their characters. They're like somewhat brotherly in a way to each other. But yeah, I feel like that's an obvious choice for me is to pick them.
So my next pick, I'm going to pick Norma Jennings.
Yes,
the diner. She like owns the diner and works there. She's like,
I knew you would pick Norma.
Probably like, because obviously she's older than the other girls in the show, but she's like kind of like this presence of emotional warmth that most of the show lacks. And like, I don't know if there's even one scene that she's in the entirety of everything where it's like weird or confusing. It's just like she's in the diner being Norma.
She's like the mother figure.
Yeah, and she's super nice. and just
she's smoking hot.
Well,
too.
that too, but it's also like kind of like I said, it's like she's the sunshine, happy part of the entire story, and there's like some like minor things that'll happen, but like for the most part, when she's on the screen, like you're in a good place and you're eating pie and you're drinking coffee, and besides all the like detective investigating FBI stuff and all the like metaphysical crazy David Lynch stuff, I think the heart of the story of the overall vibe of the show is that diner and what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I think
that's a great choice. Yeah, that's a great choice. Also kind of has to be in the top, I feel like, because the entire show is about her, Laura Palmer.
Yeah, she was on my short list here.
Yeah, I think it's hard to not draft her as a character in your top 10 Twin Peaks characters of all time. Most of our understanding of Laura is posthumously. And that's like, you start out season 1, it's not a spoiler. The show is about Laura Palmer is dead, and they're trying to figure out why she's turned up wrapped in plastic. So a lot of what we experience of her as a character is people talking about her, people quoting things she has said, or flashback scenes. And then obviously she's the main character of the movie Fire Walk with Me. And she has quite a bit of like a presence in The Return in a sort of a different way. But I think in terms of maybe the darker side of this show, because we've talked about like it's easy to kind of gravitate towards the happier, warmer, brighter, lighter, positive characters in the show, like what we've already mentioned. All of the ones we've mentioned have sort of been mostly like the happier parts of the show. But I think it goes without saying, you have to understand that like Laura is the embodiment of everyone's pain and suffering. And I think every girl who has ever been hurt in a way at all has felt like Laura in a way where you feel like a lot of people know you, but no one understands you. And I think we see that in season 1 through the perspective of everyone, making assumptions about her and saying like, well, she wouldn't have done this. Well, she couldn't have done this. Well, she wouldn't do drugs, or she wouldn't be in this, risky environment, or she would never go there. But then the farther you go into understanding her, you actually realize that like nobody was looking out for her. Like there's a ton of people who just assume that they know how she is or who she is, but nobody was actually caring for her in the right way. And like, it's sort of like what Bobby says at her funeral, like, we're all responsible for her death. And like, I found that just really poignant, because I think that's the type of shit that just happens all the time, is that, at-risk girls or girls that are being hurt, like aren't being looked out for because people think they're doing enough when they're not. And I also think Laura as a character is just an incredibly tragic and beautiful character, especially in Fire Walk with Me. Like her quote about the angels won't be able to reach you because they've all gone away is just like it just guts me every time. Like that movie is so hard to watch. It's like nauseating, but at the same time, I feel like the way that David Lynch handles a character like her is very reverent towards women and women's suffering. And it isn't just using her as sort of like a spectacle. It doesn't feel like a CSI episode is what I'm saying. Like it doesn't feel like they're like, oh, here's another dead stripper.
Yeah, she definitely has a backstory to everything, and obviously the movie goes into it more. But yeah, she's definitely the soul of the show for sure, and everything stems from her or revolves around her, even though she dies at the first episode. Okay, my next pick. This is where it gets tough, because I feel like a lot of these are kind of not similar in characterization, but like level of importance or me liking them. I'm gonna pick the Mitchum brothers.
That's so great. I love that.
So they're in The Return only. Basically, they're like they're like brothers who are kind of in the mob, or like they have some nefarious businesses in Las Vegas, and the Dougie Jones character goes there, and they basically lose out on money, and then they're trying to get money from the insurance company. And long story short, they're kind of like mean, foreboding characters, but as soon as they get their paycheck, kind of like in the middle of The Return, they just become the sweetest, overjoyed, nice guys, and they go out of their way to do anything and everything for Dougie Jones. And just the way their characters change is really funny to me, and how they act, especially in the second half, or the back half of the episodes of The Return, where they're just like constantly doing everything possible to make sure that Ducky Jones is good and his family's taken care of. And
every kid needs a playset.
And oh, you need to take a plane to Spokane at the last second. We'll get you there right away. You need this food. We'll get it right away. Like it's just so funny to me, and I think they do a good job. Because one thing about The Return, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but like there's a lot of characters who are clearly evil or clearly mean or bad, and they just stay there. That's who they are. And so like these guys start out that way, but do a complete 180 flip, and the rest of the time they're just really funny to me. And they have like those 3 blonde girls in the pink dresses just like robotically doing whatever they want, but they're not like taking advantage of them, really. It's just like they work for them. But just the way they interact with them, and the way they interact with Dougie Jones and some other side characters, it's just really good to me. So I put them as my next pick.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I forgot how like evil and menacing they are at the beginning of The Return, and how much it flips towards the end, and they're sort of like a lot of the comic relief in The Return. So if I have this right, we've done our top 6. So my next one will be number 7. And I kind of feel like I have my list here, but I'm going to go shoot from the hip as far as what I actually would rather do, because it's so easy to pick any of these, and I could make a case for any of these other ones I have listed. But particularly just today, February 1st, how I feel right now, it's going to be Dr. Jacoby.
He might have been my next pick.
He's so crazy. Like, so he's the psychiatrist in Twin Peaks, and because Twin Peaks is a small town, it's like he kind of sees everybody. So he was seeing Laura before she died, and anybody that knew Laura sort of loved her. And so he's like sad that she's gone, and feels like he had some of her secrets that he took with him. But like through the entirety of seasons 1 and 2, he wears 3D glasses, like the red lens, blue lens. Like inexplicably, he just is constantly wearing 3D glasses all the time. He has like an affinity for Hawaiian shirts, and like in his office, it's like very Hawaiian, and he's just drinking out of like a coconut a lot of times. And then his character in The Return is insane and cracks me up. It doesn't seem politically affiliated, but it's like sort of a conspiracy theory podcast that he runs, where he's just talking about how like the mega corporations are coming for you. And it's like, he's like constantly trying to give people advice through his like stream of consciousness podcast that he has, that, you know, Nadine is always listening to, and she's always like falling in love with what he's saying.
He's got the gold shovels.
He's got the gold shovels, and he's like, you shovel your way out of the shit. And like it's like this angry, fervent sort of like tinfoil hat podcast that he has. He's just a really funny character to me, and I like his vibe. And like, yeah, maybe he's like smarmy and like kind of gross in certain ways. Like the first time you meet him, you're like, ooh, that's a weird guy. But like, yeah, he's a weird guy, but it's funny. And like,
yeah, he's really funny.
I just like the whole Hawaiian stuff. Like, I just think it's funny.
Yeah, his glasses make him a unique character immediately. I really like how bizarre but accurate his character is in The Return, and what they do with him. But yeah, that's a good pick.
Number 8.
Well, so I have 4 options for my last 2 spots that I wrote down. I think my next one I'm going to pick is Freddy, the green glove guy in The Return. He's literally, this isn't really a spoiler, but he's literally like, he like shows up in episode 15 or 16 of The Return, and there's 18 episodes, and then it's all over. So like he's like in the very, very end of it. And at first he's kind of just like completely a random, who is this? Why does he have a green glove on? And as you watch the show and as it ends, you figure out why he's important. But I like him because he's just like a nobody, like average Joe type guy, but he's like from the UK, so he has the accent, and we found out that he has like these YouTube videos where he can do every minor distinction of English accents.
If you're on YouTube at all and you've seen any compilation videos of like one man doing multiple different English or British accents or multiple different European accents, his blonde guy, that's him. That is the actor that's in Twin Peaks. And I learned recently that I guess that's how David Lynch found him, was by watching YouTube videos, which is just hilarious to me, that he's like, I just want this guy in my show, and he's going to be like a critical character for the end of the finale of my entire show that's going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, he definitely comes out of nowhere because like he's not even hinted or talked about for the first 2 seasons and then the first like 13, 14 episodes of The Return. And then he just like is randomly having a conversation with this guy.
He works with James. He's James's like coworker. And James is like a critical character. So he's just like an offshoot of a critical character that's just a coworker, and he's just decides to have a conversation with him.
For some reason, I never connected that was James that he was talking to. But
yeah. James has less of a role in
that's the guy with the motorcycle.
Big forehead.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, what's your last pick? Because I kind of left you one that I thought you might pick. Well, but I'm also not sure I'm going to pick this person.
It's really, really difficult because I could honestly pick any of these people on my list and I could talk about them and it would be justified, but I know you may not mention this one, whereas one of these options you might mention and we can get them both covered. I'm going to say the Log Lady.
She was not on my list.
I knew you wouldn't mention her. She's not necessarily a character that drives a lot of the plot forward. I don't think she's a character that has a lot of like dynamic scenes, but I think she is an avatar for the show in a way that not a lot of other characters besides Dale Cooper are. Like a lot of people that aren't familiar with Twin Peaks know who the Log Lady is, because apparently back when they were airing the show, she sort of was like, before the episode would air, they would have like a thing with her in a chair near a fireplace, and she would sort of be like, tonight we're watching Twin Peaks episode blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was sort of the like Robert Stack of Twin Peaks, where she just kind of introduces the show. And like I think she's also just a very like perceptive person. I mean, it doesn't spoil anything. The whole concept of her character is that she has a log that she's like, my log is talking to me, and my log saw what happened to Laura that night. And everywhere she goes in the whole show, she's carrying her log, and that's it. And she's just like, it's almost like her pet. And I just like that because it's funny, and she's also spot on with everything she says, even though zero explanation. How does your log communicate with you? No idea. Why are you sitting at the diner with a log? No idea. Why do you take the log everywhere you go? No idea. But she's cute and has glasses. And then I also heard that in her scenes in The Return, she apparently died like only a few days after shooting those. And that just like adds some levity to the scenes where she was like, I'm dying.
Yeah, a lot of these real life actors either died right before or right after The Return.
Yeah. I think that's a good one for me to call my last favorite, because I feel like I could honestly name so many others, though. There's so many really lovable characters, but I feel like without mentioning her, it kind of is like not really a Twin Peaks top 10, just for the aesthetics of like, she's the Log Lady. She doesn't even have a name. Like she does have a name, but like everyone calls her the Log Lady. So Yeah. I feel good about that one.
So do you want to do honorable mentions later after
We'll
I'm
do
done?
honorable
Okay,
mentions.
because
Yeah.
I was gonna walk through my decision making here, but so my last pick is gonna be Audrey Horne.
I love that you picked that.
I think with Audrey Horne, she's like almost the exact opposite of Laura Palmer, where she survives. She's not blonde, she's brunette, but she's like eagerly trying to figure out the mystery. She's like really into Dale Cooper in the first season, and she's like trying to go undercover. And I know in The Return she has a very small role, but I also think her role in The Return is more interesting. I think obviously Laura Palmer is more important, obviously, but like after her, it's kind of like which of these other
leading ladies
wants to be a part of the show or like figure it out. I think Audrey's like trying to figure out the mystery like the viewers are, and I think that, and then I think I really like she like chains herself to the bank. She'll like do these random unhinged things just to try to figure something out. Or she's like reckless.
Reckless is a good word.
But kind of smart.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
So the way you're explaining it is totally spot on, because to me, she's the anti-Laura Palmer, but she's also like
another version of her.
Yes, exactly. She's two small alternate universe steps away from having been Laura. Like her...
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but there's other things that kind of go along with that. But
yeah, but like her family dynamic is set up in such a way that's similar to Laura's family dynamic. Her relationship to like her dad is similar to Laura's relationship with her dad. Very like boy crazy, similar to Laura. But I also think that the recklessness of Laura's character was done in a self-harm way versus Audrey's is done in a I'm just too damn curious way. And
she's more like a naive.
Exactly.
Thinks she can do it by herself when the FBI can't even do it.
Yeah.
So,
and like arguably she finds out a ton. So
yeah.
But I think what's funny is rewatching it the second time, I was kind of initially irritated with her character because she's quite histrionic and like wants to insert herself in everything, especially in the beginning. Like I forget what it is, but I think it's like a bunch of, maybe is it Swedish people come to the hotel, and she like goes out there and starts crying about Laura, trying to get attention from all of them, and then walks into the other room and like giggles about it. And I was like, damn, you're like feisty and bitchy, and I don't know if I like that, but I actually like, the farther it goes on, the more I kind of like her.
Yeah, I think she represents the viewer's eagerness to unpack the mystery.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, again, not to give anything away with The Return, but like when it comes to thinking about The Return after finishing it, her storyline is the one that I think about the most. And it's the most far removed from what's going on in The Return. It's almost a completely separate plot line.
Yeah, like what her stuff in The Return is almost like a completely different way that was shot. Not shot, but like configured beforehand.
Yeah. It's probably the stuff we've talked about the most since finishing. You're like, I actually heard this. And I'm like, I've never heard that. Like just theories and, you know, stuff like that. So she grew on me after the second watch. Whereas the first watch, I was like, I don't know if I really like her that much. But
all right. So honorable mentions.
I think we both need to go ahead and mention it's Shelley.
Yeah. Shelley was the one I was almost going to pick. If I was in the realm of Twin Peaks 1990, I would definitely go for Shelley over Audrey or Laura Palmer.
I agree. I would.
But Shelley's character is kind of not annoying, but it's, I guess, like her trajectory is kind of not what I would have liked it to be, which I guess you could say for most characters, but like, this isn't really a spoiler, but like early on in the first season, she's married to an abusive guy.
Yeah.
And most of the first season or two is her trying to get out of that. And she also works at the diner with Norma. So
Norma's kind of like her mother figure.
Yeah, and then in the return, she definitely plays a lesser part. She's like the mom of Amanda Seyfried.
which is so funny to me.
Um, but she doesn't really do a lot in the return. And neither does Audrey, but I thought overall Audrey was like trying to figure out the story of the show, whereas Shelley was trying to figure out her story herself.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my annoyance with Shelley, by the way, I love Shelley as a character, but my annoyance with her, if we're talking about the way that women handle themselves in the show, Laura conducts herself in a way that is not risk averse and does stuff to be reckless to hurt herself. Audrey does stuff that is not risk averse because she's just too curious and she's trying to actually help, but she's also kind of a little narcissistic and like, ooh, I want to be involved. Shelley just kind of lets bad stuff happen to her and doesn't really do anything to protect herself, and also is constantly looking for a man to help her.
Well, and anytime something good happens, she almost pushes it away. Ultimately.
Exactly.
And I think the moment where Gordon Cole is in the diner and he's like hitting on her is kind of like, you could say it's kind of like David Lynch's attempt to like
release her from that pattern.
Yeah, but the character of Shelley ultimately still doesn't. I keep wanting to say Shelby, but it's Shelley. She like basically turns him down ultimately, but yeah, I think I could have liked her more if other things happened.
We just think she's really smoking hot. Like, she's really pretty.
Yeah, she's the hottest out of all of them. For sure.
I love how we're not mentioning Donna, because, like, sorry,
no,
Donna.
No, Donna's dumb.
She wasn't even in the return. Yeah,
I think if we're ranking by hotness, it's number 1 Shelley, number 2 Norma.
Yeah.
And part of it might be those diner outfits, but also just like they're giving me pie and coffee all the time.
Now you see why Gordon Cole and Dale Cooper just love them, and they're always there. It just makes sense.
Real quick, the next honorable mention I had that I thought you might pick was Harry Dean Stanton. I think his name is Carl. He's the owner of the trailer park.
Big Trout.
Yeah, and he basically is just playing himself almost. He's just like
near death.
Well, especially the return. He's just barely moving on, like walking around, but he's well, I mean, we love Harry Dean Stanton and pretty much everything he does. He's always got that heart of gold underneath this brooding, deteriorating masculinity, whether because he's old or he's playing a poorer person or just he's always playing a character who's either down on his luck or slighted in some way. And he's just very good at playing those type of characters.
He actually wasn't on my list, but good choice. I like that we brought him up. I'll go ahead and mention one other one that would have been on it was on my honorable mentions. Almost made my top 5, but Harry S. Truman. I just think I'm sorry, but in another universe, him and Dale Cooper, OTP. Like, I've seen so many fan edits that are like shipping them, and I'm like, it actually kind of would.
They're definitely on the same wavelength,
but different in a very, very, very specific way. Like, Harry is very binary, very literal, very facts and logic, and Dale Cooper kind of like challenges him to think outside of that and sort of makes him think about like the metaphysical and the feelings of things. Like, there's the very first episode, I think Harry's like telling him about the body of Laura Palmer, and Dale is like, okay, actually, you got to tell me, what trees do you have around here? Like, interrupts him and is like, these trees around here are gorgeous. And you can tell Harry's kind of like, what the hell is this guy doing? But you can see his evolution as a character throughout the show as sort of adopting that like ideology a little bit more. And I just like him. It's sad that he's not in the return and he's just replaced by.
Yeah, he's one of the few actors who didn't come back.
Yeah, he like his stand-in is sort of like his brother. But yeah, another honorable mention would be Harry Truman, because he's also gorgeous. But
those were kind of all the ones I was actually considering picking. There's a few more
I have
that I
two
feel like we
more.
should talk about quickly.
Yeah.
Michael Cera in The Return as, what's his name again? Marlon Brando.
Wally
something?
Brando.
Wally Brando.
Wally Brando Brennan, I think, is their last name. It's Andy.
He's literally in one scene, but it's hilarious.
Sometimes my shadow is in front of me, sometimes behind me. Like, he's just so...
I also like Jack Nance's character, whose name I forgot, but
oh gosh, hold on. He's the one who
there's
says,
a fish in the
"Don't
percolator.
don't drink that coffee.
She's dead, wrapped in plastic."
Yeah. Hold on. Pete Martell.
Pete.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like his character because he's the one who discovers Laura and makes the call, and then I like the fish in the percolator thing. I wanted to mention two more that I'm surprised. One of these I thought maybe was going to end up in your top, but Ben Horne.
Yeah, I considered it, but
there are others won out for sure. But Ben Horne, who's Audrey's dad, I mean, arguably he's a version of Leland, because if we're thinking of it as a dual, Laura, Audrey, and then their dads, Leland and Ben, they're kind of similar in a lot of ways. And I've heard some people explain like the duality of examining Leland versus Ben Horne as being like something to pay attention to when you rewatch. And I caught a bit more of it on this last watch, but him, especially interacting with Jerry, is really interesting because it's Ben and Jerry. And
yeah, the Jerry character I actually like more because the actor is in Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh yeah, and he's like eating a giant sub at one point in season 1.
Well, and then The Return, he's just high the whole time, wandering in the woods. But it eventually makes sense what's happening, or how it goes about. But
yeah, the only other one I was going to mention that I have a really big soft spot in my heart for is Andy, because I love him. He's like he's a police officer, but he's like the most soy boy police officer ever. Anytime they ever investigate anything, he cries. And then like there's a part where I forget what they're doing, but he like gets on the phone and he's like, I didn't even cry. And he's like so proud of himself. Like, I like his weird balding pattern on his head and how just like pathetic he is. I just think he's so funny. And him with
Lucy,
yeah, him and Lucy just like as a character, like a dynamic and a couple, is just really, really funny to me. And then it's just funny to imagine them having Michael Cera as a son. But yeah, I think those are most of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I'll shout out Tammy, who's in The Return. She's probably number 3 on the hot list.
Christabel?
Yeah.
She's wonderful.
I also like Major Briggs. He's number 4. No, but he's like...
Major Briggs is cool too, though.
He's kind of like on... He's like one of the few characters who is like on the David Lynch, what's going on? Like
wavelength,
like tier of thinking of because he's into the metaphysical stuff more than any other character, and he's actually trying to figure things out.
He's interesting too because he's quite staunch and quite like cold a little bit, especially towards Bobby. And like him and Bobby have like a really rocky relationship. And then there's just a point at which there's this like wonderful scene where they're sitting at the diner and you can tell that Bobby's always trying to vie for his dad's affection. And Major Briggs is just like, I had a dream last night that me and you met in a dream and I shook your hand and I realized I'm proud of you, son. And like Bobby's just crying and he stands up and he's like, I just want you to know that, son. All right, bye. And like, but it's like one of the most emotional scenes because it's like a moment of Major Briggs connecting that like metaphysical side to his waking life and like telling somebody about it. And I feel like that's a very interesting thing with him. I also like Big Ed.
Yeah.
Him and Norma are really cute. And I just like Big Ed because he's honestly like such a good like partner to Nadine, even though Nadine is like really hard to manage.
Yeah, if we did like a worst character, Nadine would be up there.
Nadine would be up there. Her and her silent drape runners. I just want to like, she annoys the shit out of me. And then her whole arc in season 2 is like really exhausting is a great word for it. And then, I just think I feel bad for Big Ed, but I think that's the point, is like, you're like, man, you put up with a lot from this girl. Like, but all the scenes between Norma and Big Ed, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, this is wonderful. Like, just lovey-dovey. Trying to think if there's anything
there's a
else.
few more we could shout out, but like, there's just
I like
like
them.
100.
Yeah, there's so many characters. Like, if you look up a character tree, it's like everyone's connected in super strange ways.
I like the one-arm guy.
Yeah, the one-armed man.
The fireman.
Yeah, he's great.
And the woodsman guy who the gotta like guy in the return.
I also really like the one scene that Monica Bellucci is in, because Gordon Cole is like, I had a dream about Monica Bellucci and we were in Paris. Like, her whole line is like beautiful. We are the dreamer who lives inside the dream, but who is the dreamer? Or something like that. Like, it makes no sense, but it perfectly encapsulates the entire show.
The last one I'll say, and I don't even know his name, but from a screen time to, I'm trying to figure out the ratio, but like the amount of, he has like literally 4 seconds of screen time. It's in the return. He's, I guess, the MC or the guy on stage at the Roadhouse, or basically, and this isn't a spoiler, but in the return, pretty much every episode ends with like a real life band performing at this place called the Roadhouse. It's kind of like a honky tonk bar. And there's this one part where this guy who's not in any other parts of those sections, where he just goes on stage, he's in a suit, he's an old guy, and he's just like,
ladies and gentlemen, the 9 Inch Nails. Like, that's all he does.
Well, no, he might do that one. I can't remember if he's in multiple episodes, but there's a part where he's like talking about the ZZ Top.
Yes. Sharp dressed man.
Yeah. He's like introducing ZZ Top's Sharp Dressed Man being played on the speakers because the actual band's not there. And they start playing the song, and he does this like 3-second dance. That's one of the funniest things in the whole show.
Yes.
So I had to bring him up at the very end.
I do love that. I also think this is one that I kind of have to shout out, because, and I'll make this my last one, I swear to God. Agent Philip Jeffries, David Bowie, in all of his forms.
His many forms.
He's got literally 2 minutes of screen time in Fire Walk with Me. And I think he complained about not having enough time to shoot and felt very rushed because, and I don't think that David Lynch liked how rushed that scene was either, but it's arguably just such a cool scene. And he comes up as like a referential character later on. And then he comes up as a teapot posthumously because David Bowie had died already. And
I think Bowie died in 2016 and The Return started filming right after that.
Yeah, and so
they kind of like got a voice actor to kind of mimic his voice, but
he speaks as a teapot.
He's not a physical human anymore. He's just a metaphysical teapot.
Yeah.
Or kettle or something.
I don't know.
Or the smoke.
The smoke coming
out
of it. I don't know.
We don't know.
We'll never know. We'll never know. I could honestly go on about so many more. I'm like thinking
we could do like a top 100 list probably.
Yeah, I'm thinking of honestly so many more in my brain.
We tried to make this relatively short.
Yeah, those are the main ones that we love.
Well, thanks for listening.
Bye.